A wealthy businessman orders the ultimate sacrifice, his daughter's beloved bear, Shahbaz, to avenge an old betrayal. Zara must choose between her love for Shahbaz and her father's demands, but the shocking twist will change everything. Can their bond survive? Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more stories like this. Mr. Khalid, a successful and affluent businessman, had always been admired in his community for his sharp intellect and ambition. Over the years, he built an empire from the ground up, becoming one of the wealthiest men in the region. His reputation was one of strength, cunning, and unshakable resolve. However, beneath his polished exterior, a simmering grudge festered. Many years ago, Mr. Khalid had partnered with another prominent businessman, a man named Farhan, whom he had trusted implicitly. Together, they had launched several successful ventures, expanding their wealth and influence. However, things took a dark turn when Farhan betrayed Mr. Khalid in the most unexpected way. A deal that was supposed to solidify their business empire was sabotaged by Farhan for his own personal gain. The betrayal not only cost Mr. Khalid a significant portion of his fortune, but also tarnished his reputation in the business world. The pain of this treachery stayed with him, and his heart hardened with the desire for revenge. Years passed, but the wounds of betrayal never fully healed. Mr. Khalid's wealth continued to grow, yet the emptiness in his heart remained. He became obsessed with the idea of getting even, plotting his revenge against Farhan, who had gone on to live a life of prosperity after his betrayal. The bitterness and anger consumed him, clouding his judgment and making him lose sight of the things that mattered most. It was during this time that Mr. Khalid's daughter, Zara, became the light in his life. Zara, a beautiful, intelligent, and kind-hearted young woman, was the only person who could still bring warmth to his cold heart. Zara had a particular love for animals, and among all her pets, her bond with Shahbaz, a majestic bear she had raised from a cub, was unmatched. Shahbaz, a large and powerful creature with a gentle spirit, had been her companion for many years. Their connection was deep and profound, as though they could communicate without words. Zara treated Shahbaz like family, and the bear, in return, was fiercely protective of her, always by her side. However, Mr. Khalid's insatiable thirst for revenge had reached a point where he was willing to sacrifice anything and everything to see Farhan brought down. In his twisted mind, he concocted a cruel plan. Zara's beloved pet bear, Shahbaz, would be the key to his vengeance. He knew that Zara would never willingly part with the bear, but he was certain that he could force her to choose between losing Shahbaz or losing everything she had known, including her inheritance. He sent Zara an ultimatum, one that would tear at her heart. She was to sacrifice Shahbaz, the animal she loved and had raised as her own, in a ritual meant to symbolize the ultimate form of vengeance. Mr. Khalid believed that by performing this gruesome act, the universe would grant him the power to destroy Farhan's life, making him pay for his betrayal. In his mind, Shahbaz's life was the price that needed to be paid for his shattered dreams of partnership and revenge. The news of the impending sacrifice struck Zara like a lightning bolt. She couldn't fathom a world without Shahbaz by her side. She knew her father's pain, but she also understood that his obsession with revenge was clouding his judgment. Zara was torn between the love she had for her father and the bond she shared with Shahbaz, a bond that transcended words and logic. Yet the pressure from her father was immense. He made it clear that if she refused, she would not only lose Shahbaz but also be disinherited, left with nothing. Mr. Khalid's fury and thirst for revenge blinded him to the love between Zara and Shahbaz. He couldn't see how much this bear meant to her, nor could he understand the lengths she was willing to go to protect him. In his mind, the sacrifice was not just a symbolic act, but a necessary step in fulfilling the void of justice he so desperately sought. This was a turning point, a moment when the dark path of revenge began to take a toll not only on Mr. Khalid, but also on his relationship with his only daughter. The looming threat of losing her beloved companion cast a shadow over Zara's once peaceful life, and she found herself standing at a crossroads, torn between loyalty to her father and her fierce desire to protect the bear who had been her friend and guardian for so many years. Zara had always been a compassionate and gentle soul, known throughout her village for her kind heart and love for animals. From a very young age, she had an extraordinary connection with all living beings, often going out of her way to care for creatures in need. However, no bond she had ever formed was as deep or as unbreakable as the one she shared with Shahbaz, a bear she had raised from the moment he was born. Shahbaz, a small and vulnerable cub when Zara first found him, had been abandoned by his mother in the wilderness. His chances of survival were slim without her care, but Zara, with her innate compassion and love for animals, couldn't bear the thought of leaving him to fend for himself. She took him in, despite knowing the dangers of raising a wild animal. From the first moment she cradled him in her arms, she promised to protect him, and she kept that promise every single day of his life. As the years passed, Shahbaz grew into a magnificent bear, large, strong, and imposing in stature, but with a heart as gentle as a lamb's. Despite his size and power, he had always been a gentle giant when it came to Zara. The two had developed a profound bond, a silent understanding between them that transcended words. They had spent countless hours together, whether it was walking through the woods, playing by the river, or simply sitting quietly under the stars. Shahbaz was not just a pet. He was Zara's companion, protector, and friend. To her, he was family. Zara's love for Shahbaz was unconditional, and she could not imagine her life without him. The bear had been by her side through every important moment, her childhood, her triumphs, and even her struggles. He had never wavered, never left her side. His presence brought her peace, and the thought of losing him was a nightmare she could not bear to face. When her father, Mr. Khalid, gave her the dreadful ultimatum, the choice between sacrificing Shahbaz or losing her inheritance, it was as if her world had come crashing down. Mr. Khalid, blinded by his thirst for revenge, could not understand the depth of the bond between Zara and Shahbaz. To him, the bear was nothing more than an obstacle to his plans, a mere pawn in his quest for justice. But Zara saw Shahbaz as more than just an animal. He was a part of her soul. To give him up would be to lose a piece of herself. Despite her father's cold demands, Zara's refusal was immediate and resolute. She could not, and would not, betray her beloved bear. There was no price too high, no sacrifice too great, that could force her to sever the connection she had with Shahbaz. To lose him would be like losing a part of her heart, a part of her identity. She had cared for him since his first breath, and she would continue to do so for as long as they both lived. Zara's refusal to part with Shahbaz was not out of defiance or rebellion, but out of love. It was a love so deep that no threat, no ultimatum, could shake it. Zara knew the consequences of her decision. Her father's wrath would likely be immense, and the possibility of losing everything she had known was terrifying. But nothing could outweigh the bond she shared with Shahbaz, a bond forged through years of companionship, trust, and loyalty. In the face of her father's anger, Zara remained steadfast. She refused to let anyone tear apart the connection that had become the very foundation of her life. For Zara, Shahbaz was more than just a bear. He was her friend, her protector, her family. And no matter the cost, she would never give him up. The love she had for him was unwavering, and that love would guide her through the darkest of times. Mr. Khalid's thirst for revenge had driven him to a place of no return. Consumed by the desire to avenge the betrayal he had suffered years ago, he was no longer the loving father he once was. His coldness had only grown over time, and now, with his wealth and power at his fingertips, he was willing to sacrifice anything, even his own daughter's happiness, to settle the score. His obsession with revenge had clouded his judgment, and he could see nothing but the need to hurt those who had wronged him. In a moment of rage and determination, Mr. Khalid confronted Zara with an ultimatum. His eyes, once full of warmth and affection for his daughter, were now filled with a ruthless, calculated glare. "You must choose," he said coldly, his voice devoid of any tenderness. Either you sacrifice Shahbaz and prove your loyalty to me, or you will lose everything. Your inheritance, your future, everything will be taken away. The choice is yours. Zara's heart sank at the words. The weight of the decision pressed heavily upon her chest, suffocating her. How could her father, the man she had always trusted, ask her to do such a thing? To give up the one being who had been her closest companion, her protector, her family. It was unthinkable. And yet her father's words were final. There was no escaping the situation. The bond she shared with Shahbaz was unbreakable, and the thought of sacrificing him seemed like an impossible, heart-wrenching choice. In her desperation, Zara turned to the one person she knew could help her, an old woman who lived on the outskirts of the village. The woman, known only as Zainab, had always been a figure of mystery in the village. People spoke in hushed tones of her wisdom and the strange powers she was rumored to possess. Some said she had the ability to see the future. Others claimed she could communicate with the spirits of the earth. Whatever the truth may be, Zara knew that Zainab was her only hope. Zara made her way to the old woman's humble cottage, her heart filled with both hope and fear. As she arrived, Zainab greeted her with a knowing smile, as though she had been expecting her. The old woman's eyes were filled with a depth of understanding that made Zara feel both comforted and unnerved. "Child, I know why you have come," Zainab said softly, her voice like the rustling of leaves in the wind. "Your father's heart has been hardened by years of pain, but do not fear. There is always a way when the heart is pure." Zara, her eyes welling up with tears, explained the impossible choice she faced. She told Zainab of the ultimatum her father had given her, the impossible choice between losing Shahbaz or losing everything she had ever known. The old woman listened intently, her expression unwavering. "You must make a choice, yes," Zainab said after a long pause. "But the road ahead is not as clear as it seems. There are forces at work that neither you nor your father understand. The path to redemption is not always as it seems, and sometimes the price we pay is not the one we expect." Zara, desperate for any solution, pleaded with Zainab for help. She was willing to do anything to save Shahbaz, but she had no idea what to do next. With a knowing smile, Zainab nodded. "There is a way, child, but you must trust in the magic of the world, and you must have faith in the bond you share with your bear." On the night of the sacrifice, Zara stood in the dimly lit clearing, her heart heavy with sorrow. The cold night air brushed against her skin as she gazed at Shahbaz, who sat calmly beside her, his dark eyes filled with understanding. She had never felt more torn in her life. The bear, who had been her companion through every trial and joy, was about to be taken from her, his life extinguished in the name of her father's revenge. She couldn't comprehend how it had come to this, but the cruel ultimatum left her with no choice. Her father's anger and obsession had forced her into a corner, and now the sacrifice was inevitable. As she reached out to stroke Shahbaz's thick fur one last time, preparing herself for the impossible, a figure appeared from the shadows. It was the elderly woman from the village, the one Zara had sought out in her desperation for a solution. She had not expected to see her tonight, but here the woman was, standing before her with an urgent expression on her face. Her eyes seemed to gleam with a knowing light as she approached. "Wait," the woman said softly, her voice filled with a sense of mystery. Zara turned, her heart racing with anticipation and confusion. "There's something you don't know, something you must understand before you make this choice." Zara was confused. She wiped her tears and looked up at the woman. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I have no choice. My father, he demands this. I have to let go of Shahbaz or I'll lose everything." The woman shook her head, her gaze fixed on Shahbaz, who seemed to sense the gravity of the conversation. "You think you are about to lose him, but in truth, you are about to lose far more than you realize," she said slowly. "Shahbaz is no ordinary bear. He has been guarding something for years. Something that is far more important than you could imagine. Your father's old business partner, the one who betrayed him, he hid a treasure, a vast fortune, and Shahbaz has been the keeper of it all this time. Zara's heart skipped a beat. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. The bear, the loyal friend she had known since he was a cub, had been guarding something as significant as a hidden treasure. The treasure your father seeks is not just a pile of gold or jewels. It is the key to the true fortune of your family, a secret that has been locked away for years, the woman continued. But only Shahbaz holds the key to unlocking it. Your father, in his thirst for revenge, does not understand what he is about to lose. Zara stood frozen, her mind racing as the revelation sank in. She had never known that Shahbaz had a deeper purpose, a role so intertwined with her family's history. All these years, he had been more than a companion. He had been the protector of a secret, a legacy tied to the very wealth and power her father had built his empire upon. She looked at Shahbaz, her heart swelling with gratitude, realizing just how much he had silently borne for her. The woman's words echoed in Zara's mind. Shahbaz holds the key to the family's fortune. Her father's pursuit of revenge had blinded him to the truth, and now it was up to Zara to protect her bear, her family, and the legacy that had been hidden from them both. The weight of her decision became clearer than ever. The revelation hit Mr. Khalid like a thunderbolt, shaking him to his core. For years he had been consumed by the desire for revenge, a single-minded obsession that had led him to this moment. He had pushed away everyone he loved, including his daughter, Zara, in the pursuit of retribution against the man who had betrayed him. He had demanded that she sacrifice her beloved bear, Shahbaz, without any understanding of the consequences, without realizing what he was truly about to lose. As the truth sank in, Mr. Khalid felt a deep, hollow emptiness within him. The wealth and power he had accumulated over the years seemed insignificant now. His desire for vengeance, which had once seemed so justified, felt like a hollow pursuit. He had been blinded by anger and bitterness, so consumed by his need to right a wrong that he had failed to see the bigger picture. His daughter's love for Shahbaz, the bear who had guarded a treasure of unimaginable value, had been right in front of him all along. But in his rage, he had been too blind to see it. Zara stood before him, her eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and fear, but also a glimmer of hope. Her gaze never wavered as she waited for him to make a decision. Shahbaz, the bear who had been by her side through thick and thin, stood calmly beside her, as if waiting for the man who had once been his protector to choose a different path. In that moment of clarity, Mr. Khalid realized the depth of his mistake. His heart, once hardened by years of betrayal and loss, suddenly felt heavy with regret. The path of revenge had cost him more than just his wealth. It had almost cost him his daughter, his connection to his own humanity, and the love of those he held dear. He looked at Zara and saw not the daughter he had tried to control, but the woman who had been brave enough to stand by her friend, the bear who had been her guardian. The weight of his actions bore down on him, and for the first time in years, Mr. Khalid understood the true cost of his obsession. In that instant, he made a choice to walk away from the path of vengeance and toward a new beginning. He turned to Zara, his voice soft and filled with remorse. "I was wrong," Mr. Khalid said, his voice trembling. "I have let my anger control me for too long. I have hurt you, and I have hurt Shahbaz. In my quest for revenge, I nearly lost the only things that truly mattered, my family and my peace. I have been blind." Zara, her heart pounding, could hardly believe what she was hearing. This was not the father she had known, the man who had been driven by rage and stubborn pride. This was someone else, someone who had seen the light after all these years. Mr. Khalid took a step forward, looking down at Shahbaz with a mixture of awe and guilt. "I can never undo the damage I have caused, but I can try to make things right. The past can never be erased, but I will not let my thirst for revenge destroy what is left of us." With that, he turned to Zara and gave a small, tentative smile. "You and Shahbaz are free. I choose peace over vengeance." Tears welled up in Zara's eyes as she hugged her father, feeling a weight lift from her chest. Shahbaz, as if sensing the change, let out a soft growl and nuzzled Zara, a symbol of forgiveness and trust. Mr. Khalid, now free from the chains of his past, finally embraced the path of redemption.